What is going on, alpha males? Welcome to the Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we talk about what it means to be a man the right way, strong, made in the image of God, and don't apologize, making godly men strong and making strong men godly. Today I have a really good episode and a really good concept I've actually been working on for, I believe, well over a year. I haven't done an episode mostly because it's constantly evolving, but I think now I have a couple of different things to talk to you guys about. And two, I honestly didn't know what to call it, and I'll get into that in the main body of the show. But a good episode, even if not a good title. Before I get into the short autobiography part and the actual topic, I just want to say thanks to all the patrons. They are more encouraging and do a lot more for the show than they realize, I'm sure, and I am very appreciative, number one, to God, and that He uses them to help the show. So thanks to all the patrons. That I'll plug in the bio, and then we'll get into the main topic. Who am I? A question we should all ask ourselves. I am, first and foremost, a servant of God, made in His very own image, a follower of Jesus Christ, a simple man called by God to the Great Commission to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Next, a little bit about my background and what God has allowed me to do and blessed me to do in life. Grew up what most would consider very poor in the backwoods of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic United States, hunting and fishing. Joined the Marine Corps at 17. Did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. So a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran. Infantry assaultman. After the combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also a veteran of law enforcement. I served with LAPD. I was a sworn peace officer, a cop for LAPD. I worked regular patrol assignments and more specialized assignments. One of those more specialized assignments was warrant service, fugitive recovery. Also had some other law enforcement roles. I am an FBI certified firearms instructor and been certified by another 3-letter government agency in a lot of firearms and training things. I've also been a private contractor, worked in the private sector, pertaining to tactics and gunfighting and protecting America from enemies foreign and domestic. I served as the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters in a large metropolitan area. That was our primary mission, to stop active shooters, which sadly are a thing in America today. I've also been blessed to do quite a bit of competition shooting. Started my first formal competitions even before joining the Marine Corps at 17. I had won more shooting competitions than I can remember. I have competed in all manner of disciplines in shooting. I've been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion, West Coast regional champion. Like I said, been blessed to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. Mentioned hunting. I've hunted to put meat on the table starting when I was a child. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide, hunting and slaying all manner of beast. And I don't apologize for that. Humbled to be the host of 3 podcasts. Simple Man Sermons, Alpha Male Podcast, and Gunfighter Life. Obviously, as things not mentioned, I've been blessed to do many other things. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a believer and follower of the Bible, the Word, Jesus Christ. And I don't apologize for that. With that, let's transition into today's topic. Now, today's topic, I've struggled with what to call this concept. My first thought, Scout Belt. Now, I've got a lot of respect for Jeff Cooper and all that he's done for the gun community and the tactical world. And he's got a big thing, the Scout Rifle concept, and I will grant that that is his concept. And because of that, when you say Scout, a lot of people automatically think of the Scout Rifle, which is kind of in line with what this is, although it has nothing to do with the Scout Rifle. But that concept, what he considered a Scout, at least what I believe he considered a Scout, would be very in line with this kind of concept. But I didn't want it to be closely associated with that, and I knew that in a lot of the gun community it would be. Although I don't think that Jeff Cooper has a monopoly or had a monopoly on the word Scout. I think that his Scout Rifle concept has overshadowed a lot of other things titled Scout. So I'm not sure about calling it that. My next thought that's most fitting would be a Recon belt or a Recon kit. And when you say Recon, a lot of people probably don't even realize that comes from the word reconnoiter. Reconnoiter is a good word for what this belt is and what it represents. But you would shorten that to Recon. And a lot of people, when they think Recon, they think, U.S. Marine Corps Force Recon. I was a U.S. Marine combat veteran, but I was never Recon, and I'm not going to pretend to be. They certainly don't carry this, and as far as I know, don't adhere to this concept. As far as I know, nobody really does it this way. So although a reconnoiter belt would be very fitting, Recon has that connotation of force recon. So I guess I don't really, at this point, have a good unadulterated term for what to call this. Maybe I'll call it a Scout Recon belt and make everybody mad. Basically, it's line 1 gear that I use when I want to up my EDC for going out in the wilderness or going out into a more hostile environment, but I don't have a pack, or if I have a pack, there may be times where I'm putting that pack down, or my baby bug out bag, my bailout kit, where I'm putting that down and covering a lot of ground. That's how I like to hunt. I was just hunting bear like that yesterday. I'll be going in some thick, nasty stuff, literally on my hands and my knees, or jumping up and over boulders and rock climbing. That's the kind of stuff that I like to do. And that's not conducive to carrying a big pack. A lot of times I'll go kill an animal, then I'll go quickly back and get my pack to the last place I had it staged. But I still want stuff on me. What if I'm deep in the backcountry and break my ankle, or decide the weather gets better, it gets dark faster than I thought, like what happened to me recently on an excursion, and I get stuck out overnight because there was a lot of rapids I had to go over to get back, and I didn't want to have to go over those rapids at night. I thought, you know what? It's smarter for me to just stay, make a poncho hooch, and sleep out here overnight. For things like that, there's stuff you want on you in case something happens, in case you lose your pack, in case you don't have your pack when something bad happens, that you still want on you. And it doesn't have to be for hunting. You could literally be going out to scout out a new area. You say, hey, there's this whatever wilderness area that's millions of acres. I'm going to go scout that out. I've never been here. I want to go where there aren't trails and roads on the map. I'm going to go out there. My goal is to cover as much ground as possible. Some of this is going to be nasty terrain, and I don't want to pack. But I want more stuff on me than my normal EDC. Enter the Scout Recon belt, the line 1 gear for adventure, whatever you want to call it. Perhaps we'll farm this out. If you patrons or you listeners out there have a good name for this concept, let me know. I certainly don't have a monopoly on good ideas, but I've done this concept enough and for a long enough time to know that I think it has some real merit, even if it doesn't have a real good name yet. And this doesn't have to be exclusive for wilderness stuff. It could be very urban. Or it could be a small kit, as you heard in the bio, have been a private contractor. It could be for that kind of work where it's a small kit on the back of your body armor that you have with you all the time just in case you get separated from your unit. You have to escape and evade. Maybe then it's more of a small, portable escape and evade kit that you can run with and is not going to really hinder your movement at all. Be far different in an urban environment. You'd obviously perhaps want some lockpicks in there, or you'd want quite a bit of cash or a small gold bar or something in there. That'll get you out of a lot of hairy situations where a gun is not always the right answer. But the small kit, the point of that digression is that the small kit is not just for wilderness. It can come in handy in a lot of circumstances. And I've had this kind of concept for a long time and kind of evolved it over time. And this is really gonna depend on you. And this is in addition to my EDC, my everyday carry, which consists, number one, of God and the Word of God, a handgun, a sidearm. Usually I carry day-to-day a full-size fighting handgun, and a good knife. I generally, although not always, will carry a small fixed blade knife, and I usually will up to a larger fixed blade knife for this. And usually in my everyday carry I have a medium to small size fixed blade knife and a smaller, what I would consider like a micro knife, like a little tiny, the very smallest of the Swiss Army knives, I believe, the smallest. So there's two blades there. So if I don't mention a blade in this, that's why. So there will be some in there every day. My EDC, I carry a way to start a fire. So just realize that this is an addition to my everyday carry. And to give you an idea of this kit, it is about the size, I just checked, and it's almost exactly the size of both my fists put together. Like if you put them in front of your body like you're punching your own fists, if you put them together and look at that, now men's fists are going to vary, but the kit is about that size. It's small. I carry it on my belt in the small of my back, what's commonly referred to, ironically enough, as scout carry. That's how I like to carry this. It is small enough, and I have done it to test it, that I can conceal it with just a light jacket or an unbuttoned shirt. It just hangs down and it hides that. Again, it's not a huge, giant kit. That's kind of the point. I can run with it. I can sprint with it. I can crawl over rocks with it and crawl under logs with it. I can do all manner of things with it without it really being even noticeable, let alone hindering my movement. So that's about the size that it is. Again, when I'm in the wilderness, a lot of times I'll carry a larger fixed blade knife for making shelters, for doing things like that. My EDC knife wouldn't do that, but it's not a great hatchet. It's not a great saw, whereas a bigger fixed blade knife has those capabilities. I experimented with carrying a large fixed blade knife in scout carry and carrying this slightly to the side, but I don't like that nearly as much. If I'm carrying a large fixed blade, I like to carry this kit in the small of my back and carry that knife slightly to the left so I can get it with my weak hand, because again I have a handgun on my strong side, and I just carry it just straight vertically, the way most knives are carried. And as I've mentioned, there's a modular approach to this. I have my normal size, what most would consider probably smaller than average, but a normal size, full size bug out bag. It stays behind the front seat of my primary vehicle. Then I have my baby bug out bag, which I'm big on, the bailout bags, which we've talked about here. Either go inside of that or be strapped across the front with my bigger bag on the back to kind of balance it out. This kit, when I'm not wearing it, is either on my dash if I'm too lazy, but where it should be is, if it's not on my body, clipped to the main strap of that baby bug out bag, of that bailout bag. I have options when I'm going to do something. A lot of times I'll just grab that bag. This is on there. If I decide to drop that bag because it's getting too heavy or I don't want to take it, then I'll just take this. So now that you kind of understand the concept, the philosophy behind it, what it is not, hopefully a little bit better, you're probably saying, well, get to the point, get to what's in here. So let's do that. I'm just going to go through it here, no particular order, and I might forget one or two things. But let's get to it. Okay, Neosporin triple antibiotic ointment. Good for a lot of things, most notably stopping you from getting infections, which is quite important. So we got that. Number 2 thing I have in here is a small, and I mean small, fishing kit. 2 kinds of different fishing line, a few different hooks, a jig head, and a small soft plastic lure like a grub. As you'll know if you listen to recent episodes, I can and have made a lure from just stuff that you can find with a fish hook. It does work, but I learned from that experience I probably would have caught far more fish to eat for dinner if I had, let's say, a jig head or a small rubber grub. They don't weigh nearly anything, and it's much easier to just use one than make one. There's also a little dry fly in here. So just a very minor, small fishing kit. It weighs very, very little, even though there's a lead jig head in there. It's very tiny. I have some blue thread for tassels. I have fire cord. Now, fire cord, if you don't know, is 550 cord in and of itself with a fire cord inside of it that is good for tinder. It's a flammable, call it a wick, if you will, for starting fire. I have that wrapped around a full-size ferro rod with some duct tape. The ferro rod, if you don't know about a ferrocerium rod, it is for starting fire. It's a decent-sized ferrocerium rod, although I do carry a smaller one sometimes in my... I either carry the same size one or a slightly smaller one, depending on my everyday carry. But this is a good-sized ferro rod for actually starting fire. It's not like, hey, gimmicky, look how little this ferro rod is and I can start a fire. It's like a legit, I want a fire and I want to be able to make fire for a long time, decent-sized ferro rod. If you want to see the size I'm talking about, because I don't know the size off the top of my head, you can see that in the bailout kit at goodshepherdtraining.com. It's the same one that's in this Scout Recon belt. Anyway, that's all tied on that fire cord, which also gives me some extra 550 cord should I need it. There is a surgical scalpel in here, although I will have other blades. If I need to cut something out of myself, which is not uncommon, do that pretty regularly, whatever that might be, I want a good, sterile, and small, and very sharp scalpel. Could I do it with my big fixed blade knife? Could I Rambo it and throw some gunpowder in there? I could, but Neosporin and the surgical scalpel is really nice to have. So I got that in there. Again, it weighs very, very little. I have a regular Bic lighter because, let's be honest, they just work better than ferro rods. I have it wrapped on the top with duct tape, 1 to keep it dry, and 2 because duct tape is flammable. Here is a really important part of this kit. I have a good lensatic compass, like a Boy Scout compass. Oh, it's just a scratch. I thought maybe it was cracked. I do break these quite regularly. That's why I have backups. But it's not uncommon for me to break stuff. The last compass I pulled out of my kit was broken. That's why you check your kit. But a good, lensatic Boy Scout compass, if you've ever done any kind of orienteering, they're quite a bit better than just, say, one of the little tiny compasses. I got that in there. I also have a mini Sharpie. Super tactical. But they are handy for quite a lot of things. Writing yourself notes, maybe leaving a note for somebody. On that note, I have some Write in the Rain paper. So Write in the Rain paper is good for leaving notes. It won't get wet and degrade if somebody else has to find it over some time in a wet environment. Really important. Also, it's great tinder. It's essentially really thick wax paper. I learned that on my last excursion. It makes great tinder, and I've recently thrown some of it in my EDC, and I've thrown some of it in this pouch. It's great for that. Next thing I have is a toothbrush cut in half, so it fits in there. You get stuck out somewhere for quite a while, you don't really need it, but a toothbrush is nice to have. It really is. And it doesn't weigh very much. So, let's see. In the main part, I have 2 surgical gloves. They're good for a lot of things, containers, not just gloves. They don't weigh very much. Also, I have, what is this stuff called? A hexamine tablet. It's basically a little tiny, super flammable tablet you use to actually cook stuff on just by itself. But probably wouldn't need this in a lot of environments, but since I am in the Pacific Northwest rainforest, it is really nice to have. And not only can you start a fire with it, you can use it to dry out other bigger wood to get it to burn. The hexamine tablets, it doesn't weigh very much, and it's a lot of it's a lot of firepower in a small package. So you got that. Next, I have a bottle of water purification tablets. Although this is some of the cleanest water up here in the Pacific Northwest I've ever seen, I would most likely be fine drinking out of almost all of these small brooks and streams. You never know when there's a dead deer or a dead bear or whatever a few yards upstream that you can't see, can't smell, that is contaminating the water. Or the water has some kind of strange parasite in it. Why chance it when these are so light and so handy? The one downside of these is they come in a glass bottle, and the glass bottle is not light, although the tablets themselves are. I'm looking into some better solutions for this, but I use these all the time. Although I usually do carry, which I'll get to next, is a water filter. These are just better for drinking large volumes of water. If you're doing the kind of physical activity, you're generally moving a lot, and although the water filters do work, and I do like them, they take a long time to get a large amount of water. Let's say if I want a gallon of water to suck through that straw, it takes a long time. With this, I can literally just have a container, throw in a tablet or two, and then just keep about my hike or whatever I'm doing, and in a few minutes, that's purified, and I can get back to what I was doing and drink the water, and iodine is good for you. So I have those. I have a whole bottle of them. I do use those quite a bit. Next, staying on the water, we have a Sawyer Mini. I started out with the Life Straw. I don't like the Life Straw nearly as much. I don't know how much they say it purifies, but in my experience, after you've used it a few times, they get clogged up and don't work very well. The Sawyer Minis work a lot longer, and they're smaller, and if you have any kind of bottle, like, I don't know what the standard thread pitch is for most water bottles or things like that, this will screw right on there. And it's got a watertight seal on it, so you can screw it on there and drink out of the bottle. I like that a lot. The Sawyer Minis, in my opinion, from what I've used so far, are great. If somebody makes an even smaller, better one, I'd love to know about it, because this and the water tablets probably make up the bulk of the weight in this kit. But water is super important, so I'm not going to go with something that's not as good, even though it's a little bit lighter on that. The next thing I have is a micro headlamp. It's very small, but very good. It's literally just got a piece of shot cord on it to attach it to yourself. It's very small, but it does work quite well. I'd love to tell you the brand, but I honestly can't remember, and it just says Mini on it. The next one, although maybe not the heaviest thing, is definitely the bulkiest thing in this kit, and it is an emergency bivvy, a bivvy sack. I started out with just a space blanket, the Mylar blankets, and those do work. I have used those when I gotten a lot colder than I anticipated. I can tell you from first-hand experience, those do work and do work quite well. I think the Tac Bivvy, this one's by Frog Co., I think this is better. This is a better option, especially if I have to reuse it, if I get stuck out longer than I anticipated and I'm still moving place to place. Those Mylar blankets, while technically reusable in my experience, once you've opened them up, have fun trying to be stealthy or get those things to fit back where they came from. The Tac Bivvy is quite light, quite handy, and I just think it's a better option for this. It's a little bit heavier than a survival blanket, but not much, and I think you get a lot of utility out of it. And although it probably weighs less than the water options, it does take up quite a large amount of space in there. That being said, I think it's worth it because shelter is one of those things. If you're in an urban environment, maybe you don't need it. Maybe a space blanket's fine for that because you can usually find some kind of shelter. But in the wilderness, Pacific Northwest and Idaho and places like that, I have a big fixed blade knife. Yes, I can make a shelter, but that takes time. And if the weather's really bad and I didn't plan on staying out there, it's an impromptu thing, that's not time that I may have. So I think that's important. The next thing is a small tube of sunblock, really small, and I chose the one that had the least amount in it. It would be enough for a day or two, although not quite essential. If you've ever been really bad sunburn, especially on your face, it really sucks. This is light and handy. Why not have it in there? Next thing I have, since this is a small kit, instead of 550 cord, I have micro cord. I believe it's 100 pound, but it's far, far smaller than a 550 cord. It's much better in my opinion than those little white strings that are in there. but it's called microcord. It's a great thing to have. They make it in different sizes. But this microcord, I have 2 colors. The vast majority of it is brown, and then I have some more that is orange. Sometimes you want something to be covert. Sometimes you want it to be overt and highly visible. Like the orange for stuff that I might drop on the ground and lose, but normally stays in a kit. So I can see it if I need it, but it's not usually visible. It's enough microcord to make decent shelters, to make a decent shelter, depending on how you make it. But it's a decent amount of microcord. I'm not going to unravel it and measure it, but I'm guessing maybe 50 feet, and it takes up almost no space. It's super light and super strong. I also have that small length of 550 cord, and I also have, for other stuff, I carry microcord in my everyday EDC. It's on my EDC knives wrapped around the sheath, so I can use them as a neck knife if I have to, so I have that. My compass has a lanyard, so if I had to, I could get quite a bit more cordage. Another thing I have that I think is important and probably overlooked, but used in the past for me quite a bit, and it is really nice to have. And that is one of those little small seasoning packets from ramen noodles. Now you can use a bouillon cube too, but if you've ever just been out in the wilderness and killed stuff and eaten it, it is really nice to have salt. Also, salt is really important. You can get what's called hyponatremia, where you drink a lot of water and you don't really have any salt in your diet and your body can't hold that salt. So salt is an important nutrient. In modern society, with processed foods that people eat, usually they get too much of it. But if you're doing something fairly athletic and living on natural foods like foraging and hunting, these really are nice to have. And I was doing whatever people call keto long before I ever heard the term keto, before it was a popular thing. But if you don't adhere to that, maybe you want some kind of electrolyte powder or something. Usually those are filled with sugar, but some kind of sugar and salt if you want it. But I usually just do the ramen noodle packets. They're cheap. I give the ramen noodles to my dog. I don't generally consider that proper human food unless you're really on a budget. But anyway, the ramen noodle packets, what are they, like 20 cents with inflation now? Maybe 33 cents, I don't know. But I got one of those in there. Again, probably overlooked, but really, really nice to have. If you've just killed something and are roasting a fish or meat on a fire. The one that I have in here is chili powder. I also really like just a regular chicken one. Goes with a lot of stuff. Anyway, why not have it in there? They really do make your life better, especially if you're stuck out in the woods in the wilderness. They're nice to have. That's what is in that kit when I grabbed it. Again, I used it yesterday, but this kit is usually evolving. You know, if I went back to Arizona, I probably wouldn't have the same stuff in the kit that I have out here. If I was private contracting in some country in North Africa, I'd have different stuff in this kit. I'd still have a kit like this, I believe, but I would have, you know, some cash and maybe whatever the local currency is and maybe a little tiny gold bar or two. You know, in that kind of environment, I'd probably have lockpicks. They come in pretty handy, and I think that's a skill you should have. Not for anything nefarious, but how often have you locked yourself out of something? Or if you're trying to escape something and be covert. This kit could change. Urban, suburban, rural, urban. That's kind of the point. It's a small, handy kit. I consider it needs to be concealable, especially in an urban environment. For a wilderness environment, it has to be small enough that I can get down and crawl under logs and hop up on logs and jump from rock to rock trying to cross a stream. Also has to be small enough, I mentioned the bug out bag, that when I throw my bug out bag on with my waist strap, because if your bug out bag doesn't have a waist strap, it might not be a bug out bag. If you've ever hiked long distances, you'll know that most of that weight should go on that weight bearing belt on the pack and not the actual straps. You'll be miserable pretty quick if the weight is on the straps. But this again shouldn't interfere with that. Last time I went out in the wilderness and put the bug out bag on, it didn't interfere with it at all. I should mention this is just a small MOLLE pouch, so you could attach it to a bag if you wanted and rip it off if you had to run or whatever. But the idea is that it's always on you. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you guys. If you guys have a kit like this that you actually use for anything, let me know. And again, if you have a better name for this, let me know. Because I don't think the Reconnoitering Line 1 kit is really the best name for it. Tactical tip of the day. As I've mentioned a few times, I grew up really poor in the South. I didn't know that I was that poor, but looking back on it, we were pretty poor. Like, we didn't have a phone. We would walk down to the center of town back when payphones were a thing. We didn't have air conditioning. The house I grew up in. Anyway, I'm not complaining. I had a good childhood, but one of the things I remember doing and kind of getting teased for by other people was reusing pockets. But make fun of me if you want. They're a useful thing, like a pair of pants that has cargo pockets, or an old pair of shorts that have cargo pockets, or maybe a shirt that has a breast pocket. If you're going to throw that shirt away anyway, it's worn out, it's got holes in it, whatever. Maybe somebody got you an obnoxious Hawaiian shirt for your birthday that you're not going to wear. Maybe donate it, but if you're not going to donate it, you don't even want anybody else to wear it. It's so ugly. Maybe use the pockets. If you think about the pocket, it's a small, handy container that's flexible. Not everything has to be super cool, tactical, Molly multicam. You're packing stuff in a big sea bag for a journey, for whatever, or a duffel bag, or a bigger bug out bag that you want a fewer smaller containers in. Let's say you have like a bunch of fire starting stuff in a fire kit like I have in my bailout kit, my baby bug out bag. It's all in one little pouch. The tinder, the big ferro rod, the magnesium. You throw that in one of these, you get a pocket, like a cargo pocket. You cut it out so that the pocket still works, and you throw all that stuff in there and throw it in your bigger bag. Maybe it's something smaller, a shirt pocket, and you want a knife sharpening kit. So everything's in one place. A little bit of honing oil, a little bit of whetstone, maybe a ceramic rod. And that's all in one place. You throw it in your big bag. So when you go rooting around in there, you just have to grab that one thing. Oh, hey, my old blue flannel shirt pocket has my knife sharpening stuff in there. Anyway, recycling old pockets on old clothes. If it's a good shirt or something like that, I encourage you to donate it at Goodwill or give it to somebody that'll use it. Something you've just worn the crap out of, like an old pair of BDU pants or something with holes and stains on it that probably nobody's going to want. If that pocket's still useful and you have a use for it, then use it. You don't have to buy something on Amazon for everything. That is your tactical tip of the day. As Captain Planet probably said, recycle, reduce, and reuse. Your tactical verse of the day talking about being generous. Coming at you from Deuteronomy 2:5. When you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that the Lord your God may bless you and all the work of your hands. When you beat your olive trees, you shall not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not glean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. And tying that into a New Testament verse, with the same measure you use, it will be measured back to you. So, men, especially alpha males, be generous. Being an alpha male doesn't mean what you can take from somebody else. It's what can you provide for somebody else. Remember the words of Jesus. If you want to be great, be a great servant. Serve and provide for your fellow man. Matthew chapter 20. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. With that, alpha males, hopefully you've seen this episode as a service. If you want more, check out goodshepherdtraining.com. If you want to contact me, you need prayer, or you have questions, or you have a good name for this kit, or whatever, if you want to contact me, goodshepherdtraining.com. There's a bunch of little side links on there. One of them is to contact me. With that, men, get out there, be an alpha male, be a good servant, and have a blessed day.